Let's jump into the next one. The next myth says money can't buy happiness. So, I think people often think that just by earning more, that all of their money concerns will be solved. Nick, do you think this is true or not?
I mean, I don't think money can buy happiness, but I also don't think if you're broke, like you're super happy either, right? Like you're kind of stuck in that survival mode of like you don't have the luxury of even worrying about like, hey, how do I feel today? It's like, I literally have to go work 2 jobs to make enough money to make ends meet. Right. Like, and I feel like people who say money doesn't buy happiness, like, I feel like that only really comes into effect. Like once you are earning a decent income, like once you're no longer worried about what your monthly expenses are, you kind of earn enough to cover the month. I think that's when the idea of money not buying happiness kind of comes into play. But if you're well below that, like let's say you make $30,000 a year, like if someone just dropped a raise into your lap and now you're making $130,000 a year, like if we were able to measure like your raw levels of happiness, like I guarantee you it would just shoot up, And I think a lot of that's because it's going to alleviate a lot of the financial concerns, which is going to alleviate a lot of the mental burden of worrying about your money. And then now you can actually assess, okay, am I happy? Do I feel fulfilled? No, money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy peace of mind, which I think is the next step to reach happiness,
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like you mentioned, once our basic needs are met, and there's some fun in there too, anything above that is more like materialistic than anything else, rather than actual like happiness, because then you just start to crave more and more. And then, you know how it works. You can get the new iPhone and you're satisfied for a week and then you got to get something else, So I think that there's like a threshold there, but there are like 2 studies that have looked into this. So back in 2010, there's one, and they found that if you made about $75,000, it increased your happiness. But after that, $75,000, it plateaued. So you really reach this level of happiness where I think is your basic needs are met. And then it just sort of plateaus from there. However, they updated this in 2021 and they found that this goes way past 75,000. However, I think inflation comes into this as well as like the increased like consumer society we live in. So I think those are at play there as well.
Yeah, I mean, agreed, right? Like I think there's a threshold to where money doesn't really affect your happiness. Because if you take someone who's making $500,000 a year and you give them another 100,000, now they're making 600,000, like it's probably not going to affect their day to day too much. But again, if you give someone who's making 50,000, if you give them another 10,000, like that's going to go a long way for someone earning less money. But I do think what money does, like it doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy you a lot of choices and opportunities. And then through those different choices, you can seek the right opportunity that's going to actually give you purpose. And I think there's something to be said that, and it's not true in every single case, but I do think a lot of the times earning more money comes with finally finding what your purpose is. And I think a lot of people find purpose through work, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as it's fulfilling some of the things that you think are most important. But once you can actually find purpose in how you're earning money, then I think the more money, the more purpose you're driving into your life, the more you're able to do something that satisfies you. That's when I think there's a correlation between earning more and feeling happier.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think mindset comes into it as well. You'll hear people that have large net worths and they're just not satisfied with it. You know what I mean? So they're not happy. They want more. So it's like at some point you have to say, listen, all of my basic needs are met. I am not financially stressed. I can breathe at night, and you have to, realize then that like, okay, I'm content, but I think we constantly want more and more. And I think it all plays into like the money psychology of our entire existence. But at the end of the day, I think there's, a threshold of what's going to make you happy and what's really just kind of greed at the next point. Like how much more stuff can I have that I'm going to try to make me happy. Right.
And I think that's why you see a lot of people who make like extreme amounts of money, like over $1 million a year. Like they go out and they tend to try to do things with that money more than just things that are self-serving, like buying nice cars. Like there's plenty of people who do that. But I do think there's a correlation between people who earn a high income, who go out and put that money back into the community, who then find that the more money they're making, the more happiness it actually brings, because they're giving that money a purpose. And it's not just sitting there in a bank account accumulating interest, which is nice to look at, but it doesn't really do anything for you. And I think if you can actually do something meaningful and that has purpose with the money that you have, that's when more money can correlate to more happiness. But
The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.